Mr. Swiveller began to think that on those evenings when Mr. and Miss Brass were out, and they often went out now, he heard a kind of snorting or hard breathing sound in the direction of the door, which, it occurred to him, after some reflection, must proceed from the small servant, who always had a cold from damp living. Looking intently that way one night, he plainly distinguished an eye gleaming and glistening at the keyhole, and having now no doubt that his suspicions were correct, he stole softly to the door and pounced upon her before she was aware of his approach. "Oh, I didn't mean any harm indeed. Upon my word I didn't," cried the small servant woman, struggling like a much larger one. "It's so very dull downstairs. Please don't you tell upon me, please don't." "Tell upon you?" said Dick. "Do you mean to say you were looking through the keyhole for company?" "Yes, upon my word I was," replied the small servant. How long have you been cooling your eye there?" said Dick. "Oh, ever since you first began to play them cards, and long before." Vague recollections of several fantastic exercises with which he had refreshed himself after the fatigues of business, and to all of which, no doubt, the small servant was a party, rather disconcerted Mr. Swiveller, but he was not very sensitive on such points, and recovered himself speedily. "Well, come in," he said, after a little consideration. "Here, sit down, and I'll teach you how to play." "Oh, I durst do it," rejoined the small servant. "Miss Sally'd kill me if she'd know I come up here." "Have you got a fire downstairs?" said Dick. "A very little one," replied the small servant. "Miss Sally couldn't kill me if she'd knowed I went down there, so I'll come," said Richard, putting the cards into his pocket. "Why, how thin you are! What do you mean by it?" "It ain't my fault." "Could you eat any bread and meat?" said Dick, taking down his hat. "Yes? I thought so. Did you ever taste beer?" "I had a sip of it once," cried the small servant. "Here's a state of things," cried Mr. Swiveller, raising his eyes to the ceiling. "She never tasted it. It can't be tasted in a sip. Why, how old are you?" "I don't know." Mr. Swiveller opened his eyes very wide and appeared thoughtful for a moment, then bidding her mind the door until he came back, vanished straight away. Presently he returned, followed by the boy from the public house, who bore in one hand a plate of bread and beef, and in the other a great pot, filled with some very fragrant compound, which sent forth a grateful steam, and was indeed choice pearl, made after a particular recipe which Mr. Swiveller had imparted to the landlord at a period when he was deep in his books, desirous to conciliate his friendship. Relieving the boy of his burden at the door, and charging his little companion to fasten it to prevent surprise, Mr. Swiveller followed her into the kitchen. "There," said Richard, putting the plate before her. "First of all, clear that off, and then you'll see what's next." The small servant needed no second bidding, and the plate was soon empty. "Next," said Dick, handing the pearl, "take a pull at that, but moderate your transports, you know, for you're not used to it. Well, is it good?" "Oh, isn't it?" said the small servant.